Hello, everybody. This is Eric Arneson. I'll give you a little video shot. Hey. So we have been putting out a lot of stuff this first quarter of 2021. Some of the good folks at the AEC WI Planning Committee for Civil 3D saw it and said, hey, you guys mind sharing that with us? So that's what we are all about today. We got a ton of stuff for this hour, so I'm going to get right into it. If there's any questions along the way, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll try and get to them. And otherwise, let's get this started. We are going to hang around. No matter how long it takes, we'll hang around for some questions afterwards, but it may be past the 1 p.m. hour. So just to give you a heads up there, I believe we are trying to get this recorded and out to you as well. So let's get going. So just wanted to throw in, once I get done with my talking part, I'll throw a PDF of this outline into the chat for you to grab to get all the links handy. So don't worry about that. Couple of basic links we got, the knowledge base where all of our updates are, the links for getting the WisDOT content down to your machine. Also, if you are not on the update distribution list for training and customization updates, go ahead and click that listserv sign up. It's a self sign up. It's, as I like to say, the smallest, sketchiest looking web page on the internet, but it's real. Also, if you want to join our Trello board for ideas for future development, feel free. It does require a sign up to post, but not to view. So you can see what people are asking for and what our replies are. All right, so for KB update, we've been putting out a lot of trainings, a lot of Dynamo / customizations, which is what we're about going after today. I did provide a link to this WisDOT Customizations page. I just want to bring that up real quick. One of the things that I like about this page is that it not only has everything, but it's got everything kind of organized. So there's everything. If you want to see what's all in the apps application, it's right here. If you're like, oh man, there's these WisDOT design tabs and WisDOT sheets tabs, what's all in them? This is all organized exactly how it is in the interface, so you can drill through and navigate and see what's all in those commands. Also, the list of Dynamo scripts that we have, which is getting pretty long, but we've got those all listed out here too. So this is exactly how it would look in app, and also everything that's in the toolbox. So not only giving you a link to what that content is, but it's just also kind of a handy list for you to be able to scroll through and see what's what. We've been working pretty hard on some workflows, some of the more interesting ones I've got highlighted here. Cross sections with pipes, getting those to display not only kind of your standard across mainline type of setup, but also when you've got a hard skew and maybe the pipe is skewed enough that your stations at your begin and end of pipe vary drastically, just showing you how to get through that pretty easily. Combined with some of the new tools that we've got is a nice workflow on 3D surface areas. So it will let you do obviously 3D surface areas, but it also combines the area as well. So like if you had like 4 or 5 different surface areas all left side from side road to side road, it will let you group those together and send them out to a nice handy Excel spreadsheet for sending to miscellaneous quantities for earthwork, or excuse me, topsoil, or any really 3D surface area that you might need. Creating design surfaces for earthwork quantities. That was the one that we did last workshop, talking about subgrade improvements, some of the oddities, if you will, for earthwork that we run into and how to deal with those. So just some good workflows. We've also been working super hard on getting the sample plan sheets put together in Civil 3D format. That web page is right here, and I just want to show off the existing updated list of sheets that we have right now. And we're working on with the FDM updaters to get the links from there pointing over to here. But this is where they're going to be housed from here into the future. The trainings, some of them are kind of full Monty web page, videos, data sets, the whole deal. Some of them are just a little pointers on what's specific on here. Like general notes isn't a whole lot of stuff, points out some of the custom multi-leaders and whatnot, but like some of these get super detailed. And some of the new ones that we have recently just put out are signing, plan details, planting, traffic signal plans. And this is your lucky strike extra for the day is we just got storm sewer plan and profile updated and in for you guys today. That goes a little over 2 hours. It goes all the way from a completed pipe network to final sheets with mainline trunk and lats too. So being able to do something like this, where you've got your main lines and your lats below, keeping the elevations all synced up, keeping all your, not only your profile labels, but your plan labels as live and smart as they can be, goes through all of it. So if you or somebody in your firm happens to be working on a storm sewer plan, definitely check that out. All right, and this is a little smaller issue, but important on my end. All the sub help has been migrated over to HTML5 so that it looks and feels like the rest of the site, and all the local help is pointing over to there now, so we get to kind of more single source that. So excuse me, I'm gonna hand off the FDM update to Steve and drop this outline in the meeting for you guys.
All right, hello everyone. Just gonna share my screen quick here. All right, I'm just gonna do a quick review of the FDM updates that came out in our last transmittal on February 16th. That was transmittal T419. In chapter 15.5, that's the methods section of the plans preparation chapter. We added a few more standard abbreviations that we've been using in our training material and included them in the FDM. In attachment 3.3, we just added the Civil 3D version to list out what version of Civil 3D was used to put together the mapping file. And scroll down to 3.4, we also added some more recommended naming conventions for our Civil 3D alignments. Using these naming conventions will be beneficial when using our custom WisDOT tools that Keith will demonstrate. And next. Another FDM update was we've added this is in chapter 19.10.43, the digital data section, the PS&E chapter. We added a new feedback form that'll be included with our contractor data packets. The purpose of this questionnaire is just to allow our contractors the opportunity to provide feedback regarding the data that they've been provided for the construction project. And this is going to give WisDOT one means of kind of assessing the effectiveness of our digital data that we're providing. This form is completely voluntary. It's intended to be filled out by the person primarily using the electronic data, and each person would fill out their own form. So one person, putting together the construction models could fill out this form. Maybe the surveyor on the project would fill out another form. So we might get different data points for a particular project, or anyone who's using the data can fill out this form. It is a Word document. So we just asked before you include it in the packet to fill out the project information up here, and then the WisDOT project design lead at the bottom, and then the contractor will fill out the rest. There's some basic questions up front as far as how they're using the information and what they would find beneficial maybe in the future. And then the second part of the questionnaire is just kind of evaluate the condition of the data that they were provided. And there again, there's just fill in this contact information at the bottom. This has also been included in the update to the contractor data packet metadata sheet. We've included a line item for the feedback form, and also included a note at the top informing the contractor that this digital data is not a contractual document for construction. It's just being provided for their convenience. Both these forms are, like I said, Word documents, and they're found in the construction data folder in our WisDOT project template. However, if you have an older project where those weren't included in the template, you can find those in the path provided in the PDF that Eric's going to share in the chat, along with the other links for the FDM updates. That's all I had for sharing includes all our updates to the FDM for this last transmittal. And now I'll turn it over to Keith.
Okay. My name's Keith Sawinski. I'll be kicking off the live demo part of the session. I should use the word live with a grain of salt. I've actually pre-recorded all of my demonstrations today because I know we're really short on time, and I want to make sure I stay on track with things. Before we get started, I just want to give a heads up on sort of what's going to be coming, what to expect in the next few updates that we release. WisDOT is going to be over the past year, we've provided a pretty long list of Dynamo scripts, and I hope everybody's been finding those to be useful. But over the next few updates, we're going to be transitioning almost nearly all those Dynamo scripts over to regular Civil 3D commands. We want our tools to be much more discoverable than they are in Dynamo Player. We don't want you to have to hunt for things, that type of thing. It'll also give us the ability to provide much more intelligent user interfaces, as well as provide you with F1 help, so you don't have to go hunting for help as well on any of these tools. So just something to expect. A lot of these tools that you may have been finding in Dynamo Player, ultimately, they're probably going to end up on a ribbon, one of the WisDOT ribbons. In the future. There still could be some stragglers that we leave behind in Dynamo Player, but the vast majority are going to be regular commands in Civil 3D. So with that, I'm going to go through some of the new commands, a couple new scripts, and a new subassembly that we released in our most recent update. The first one is enable disable WisDOT reference templates, and this is really going to help speed up your drawing open times. So I'm going to play that video first. The first one I want to point out is if anybody, I'm sure most of you have noticed with Civil 3D 2020, it can be a little slow to open drawings and start new drawings. So just for example, just for a baseline of comparison, I'm just going to start a new drawing here, and we'll see how long this takes. You can see down here it's collecting a resource, and it's doing all this stuff with a progress bar in the bottom left hand corner. What it's doing is it's synchronizing with the reference templates we have hooked up. So reference templates are great in the fact that you know, you can keep all your drawings, every drawing that you've created with those reference templates, you can keep them up to date. So if we update the reference templates, all the drawings that you've made with our standards, you're going to get all the latest styles and command settings and all that stuff. The problem is if you keep that link going, it slows things down. So what we've done is we've added a button. It's available both on WisDOT Sheets and the WisDOT Design ribbon. If you go to the Manage panel, there's a little flyout there. There's the Enable Disable Reference Template Update. So if you click on that, it'll say Reference Template Update is now disabled. So now when I open a drawing or start a new drawing, you can see it just happens as quick as it ever had before. So it doesn't do that synchronization. So I guess my recommendation for people is if you're, for general work, you could probably just disable those reference templates and your drawings are going to open a lot quicker. If for some reason you ever need to update your drawing with the latest styles and settings, all you got to do is go back in here and just re-enable them. What'll happen is this attach reference template dialog will open up. You just click OK, and you'll see here it's gonna synchronize your drawing back up again. And then once that's done, you can just go ahead and redisable the reference templates so your drawings open quickly again. So I apologize the video quality on that one. I know it's a little blurry. I promise you the rest of my videos are much more clear. That recording just didn't turn out all that well. But the one thing I want to emphasize about that particular tool, the Disable Reference Templates, is it only applies to WisDOT reference templates. So if you have any particular reference templates for your company, that doesn't touch those. If you've got those hooked up, they're still going to synchronize when you open your drawings. The next tool is called Move Pipe End, and the purpose of this tool is to really help you with pipe placement, especially with culverts. This is a demonstration of the Move Pipe End tool. So if you've ever tried to place a culvert pipe and then after the fact, try to use the grip edits to modify the XYZ location of the end of the pipe. So for instance, I'm going to grip edit. I'm going to snap this line up here. You can see I'm not able to move that pipe in the Z direction. All it does is it just slides it down the length of the pipe. So that's where the Move Pipe End tool comes in handy. The tool is found on the WisDOT Design ribbon, the Pipe Network Utilities panel, and you'll see it here, Move Pipe End. Let's go ahead and select that. And then you're prompted, select pipe end to move. So basically, if you divide a pipe in two, you either select one side or the other. I don't have to select the very end. It can be anywhere on the half of the pipe that I want to move. So I'm just going to select it anywhere here. And then it prompts you to snap to the new location. So I'm going to snap up here to get that location. And then it gives you a series of options. It wants to know what part of the pipe you want to move to that location. So it can either be the outside bottom of the pipe, the flow line of the pipe, the center line, the crown, or the outside top of the pipe. So in this case, I want to move the top of the pipe to that location. So I can go ahead and select top, and you can see it has moved it. I'll just hit enter to repeat the command, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. Snap my new location. I want that to be the top, and the pipe is moved. Now you can see this, the structures, the apron end walls have disconnected from the pipe once you move it. That happens anytime you move a pipe independent of a structure, it's going to disconnect. So what you need to do is you need to go ahead and select the structure, snap it back to the end of the pipe, do the same thing on the other side, and then you actually need to go ahead and connect the part. So I'm going to select the pipe. That end wall is now connected. I'll do the same thing over here. I'll select this apron end wall, connect part, and now we've moved that pipe. The Move Pipe End tool can also be used to place culvert pipes. So I have an example here. On the right hand side, I got a top view. My contour is on. This is an intersection where I want to place a culvert pipe under the side road. So I'm starting at a low point here, and I want to line that pipe up with the outflow of the ditch on the other side of the intersection. Left hand side is just a 3D view of the same intersection. We're just looking at it from an angle, and I have the triangle shaded, give more of a realistic view. So to get started, I just need to place a culvert pipe. I don't need to like get it in the exact right position. We'll take care of that with the Move Pipe End tool. So I've got the culvert pipe type I want selected here. I'm just going to go ahead and we'll just place a pipe somewhere. It doesn't matter where. Just roughly get it in the ballpark. All right. So now we can use the Move Pipe End tool to move this to the exact low point and line this up exactly with the ditch. The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure I find the exact low point. So I'm going to use my flow path tool, water drop, and we'll select our surface. And we want to make sure we're doing a 3D polyline here. That'll assure that we get the actual 3D location for the end of the pipe. I'll click OK, and I'll just drop that in there, and you can see that's going to find our low point. I don't need to do that on the outfall end because I'm just lining it up with the outflow of the ditch. I'll hit Escape. Okay, so now let's use the Move Pipe End tool. I'll click Move Pipe End. I'll select the end of the pipe to move, and then I'll snap to our low point. And then we know we want that to be the flow line. All right, that side is moved. Now I'm going to move the downstream end. And this end, I just want to line it up with the ditch. So I'm just going to snap to a contour. So I'll snap to this one here. And again, we want that to be the flow line. So you can see the pipe has moved and lined up with the low point and the flow line of the ditch on the other side. Now we know that the pipe is too long here, right? We need to shorten that up and cut it off where it meets the slope of the roadway. So we can just use this view on the left-hand side to see where it daylights. So we know that the pipe on the downstream end daylights just above the first major contour above the ditch bottom. So I can go in here on this side and use the lengthen pipe grip. I'll just disable my O snap, and like I said, we know it's just above that contour. We'll snap to that location. I'll hit Escape, and you can see I'm right where I need to be. Let's go ahead and do the other side. All right, we know that the pipe should daylight just below this minor contour, the first minor contour below this major contour. So I'll go ahead and do the same thing. Want to daylight right here. And there we have our pipe length set. All that's left to do is to add the apron end walls. So I'll go ahead and edit the network. This is a 24-inch pipe. Go ahead and select the appropriate apron end wall. Snap to one end. Snap to the other. And as far as rotating these for the correct alignment, we know where our snap point is. We know it's the same contour that we used before. at the ditch bottom. We'll snap to that. And same thing on the upstream end. We know that our snap point is going to be the low point that we found with the flow path. There you go. We've placed the culvert pipe using the Move Pipe End tool. Okay, the next tool is called Align Viewport. And really this is going to help you out when you're in paper space and you're trying to get this viewport, aligned up to a particular location on, a particular location with model space. And, a common use case for this might be maybe you have a view frame group and you create your sheets, but then for whatever reason, you got to shift a view frame or rotate it or something like that. You can use this tool to quickly realign that viewport with the view frame. This is a demonstration of the WisDOT Align Viewport command. This command can be used to quickly reorient a viewport based on picking 2 points in model space. This allows you to quickly change rotation as well as the scale of the viewport. The scale can be defined by either entering a known scale or by scaling the viewport to match the 2 pick points. The Align Viewport command is found on the WisDOT Sheets ribbon under the Sheet Utilities panel. You'll find Align Viewport. The first thing when you execute the command, you'll be prompted to pick a point inside the viewport. So this is just how we select which viewport in paper space we want to reorient. So I'll select the upper one here. Once I select the viewport, it automatically switches you to model space. Now you're going to be prompted to pick the left midpoint, or a point representing the left midpoint of that viewport. In this case, that viewport was oriented with a view frame. I've changed the rotation of my view frame, and I want to match my viewport to match that view frame again. So I'm going to pick the left midpoint is going to be the left midpoint on my view frame. Now you can see my midpoint snap and my endpoint snaps are on. This command automatically enables the endpoint snap, the midpoint snap, and the intersection snap. So I'll select the left side of my view frame. Now it's prompting me for the right midpoint. So I'm going to select the other side of my view frame. It'll switch back to paper space, and then it's going to prompt you, it's going to ask you how you want to set the scale. So we can either set the scale based on the 2 pick points. So it would just set the left pick point as the left edge of the view frame and the right pick point as the right edge of the view frame, and whatever that resulting scale is what you get. Or you could just enter a scale. So in this case, I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit enter as the default, and then you can enter the scale. You can see it's giving me a default I can use, which in this case is 40. That default is derived from the original scale of the viewport before we started the command. It just it grabbed that value, thinking that you may want to maintain that scale. In this case, that's exactly what I want to do, so I'm going to hit enter. And you can see the viewport has been reoriented with the correct scale and rotation. Let's run this one more time. I'm just going to hit enter to run the command again, just to show how you can you don't have to have a view frame. You can just pick freely in model space to set your orientation. So again, I'm going to pick my viewport. Let's say this time I want to center the viewport around a particular station. So let's say I want to center it around station 378. So I'm going to hold on a second. Looks like the video just pick a station tick mark to the left of it and a station tick mark to the right of it. And let's say we want to really zoom in. So we want to zoom into the pick points that I had just selected. So in this case, I'm going to choose width to do that. So you can see now we're zoomed right in based on those 2 pick points. Let's say we want to go back to what we had before. Again, I'll pick my viewport. Again, I'm going to center on station 378. Pick the left side and I'll pick the right side. And this time, let's set our scale back to 40. You can see it's picked up the scale that we had before, in this case 6. We're going to zoom back out to a scale of 40, so I'm going to type that in, hit enter. I'll just regen my graphics to get my labeling correct. And we're right back to where we started. Okay, the next new command we are providing is called assign ALI styles. And really this is going to help you out when you have a drawing full of alignments and you need to get them stylized for production. So think of a scenario like making your pavement edge lines drawing. This is going to help you out in that situation. This is a demonstration of a new tool called Assign Alignment Styles. So this tool allows you to quickly reassign styles to all the alignments in your drawing based on an established alignment naming convention, which we have one. If you look at the FDM Chapter 15.5, Attachment 3.2, we have a list of all of our standardized naming conventions for naming your various objects in Civil 3D. So what this tool does is it looks at a CSV file, and the CSV has 3 columns to it. The first column is represents the alignment name. The second column is the style in Civil 3D that should be associated with that name. And then the third column is any label set that you may want to apply to alignments with that naming convention. So let's take a closer look at the first column, which is the name column. So this fully supports wildcards. So if I have an alignment, for example, that has the roadway name, maybe has the side left or right, and then somewhere else in the name it's got CG in it for curb and gutter. If I have a wildcard in the beginning of that and the end of that, all it's going to do is look for CG in that alignment name, and then it's going to go ahead and assign the style of the style shown here to that alignment. So the tool, what it does is it looks at each alignment, and then it looks at the CSV line by line, and as soon as it finds a match under the name column, it'll assign that associated style, and then move on to the next alignment in your selection set. So the order that these are listed in the CSV matters, because once it finds the match, it's going to stop there and assign that style and move on to the next alignment in your selection set. So a good example of that is if we look at EPS and EP. We don't want to have EP ahead of EPS, because that would mean everything with EPS, the name is going to get assigned the pavement edge style, because it would find the EP first in the list. So that's why EPS is listed first. So let's take a look at this in action. So the common scenario is making a pavement edge lines file. So what you would do is you'd go in here and you just want to bring in all your data references for your edge lines. So I'll do that. So I'm just going to drag and drop all of these alignments into my drawing. And you can see by default, they're just going to bring in whatever the last used alignment style and alignment label set was established. So it'd be a lot of work. You'd have to go and reassign all these styles correctly. So now with the assign alignment styles command, we can do this very quickly. Currently, we do not have this command on a ribbon. Ultimately, it's probably going to end up somewhere on the WisDOT Sheets ribbon, but for now, you can access the command by typing assign ALI styles. So here's where it's going to prompt you for the CSV file. We're calling it the style data file, and you have three options here. So you could, if you've been following the WisDOT naming convention, you can just hit default, and it's going to use that CSV I just showed that follows the FDM, and everything will be stylized accordingly. Now, if you've gone rogue on your naming convention, you can make your own CSV file. So at that point, you can go ahead and browse to find that CSV file. And we give you two options. You can either browse to the current drawing location. So in this case, I haven't saved this, so it's browsing to my template directory, but this would end up being your project. I could browse to the last location that I've chosen the CSV file. So in this case, the last place I've gone to is where the default is, but maybe this was in another project directory. But in this case, I'm just going to choose default because I know I've followed the correct naming convention. Next, it's going to prompt you to, it's going to ask you, how do you want to assign the styles? So I can either just assign styles to all the alignments in the drawing, or I could create a selection set. So just to show you the selection, I'll hit select. Let's just say I just want to grab these over here, and you can see it's assigned those. So let's try that again. This time I'm going to do the whole drawing. Go ahead and select all, and now you can see we've got all of our styles have been assigned. So a very quick and easy way to get styles properly assigned to your alignments. All right, let's switch gears now. We got a couple of Dynamo scripts that we're going to demonstrate. The first one is called Create Object Folders. So I'm not sure how much folks are utilizing the functionality, but Civil 3D does allow you to organize the majority of your civil objects into folders in the Toolspace Prospector. So this is just going to help you create those folders in an automated way. So maybe you want to have the same folders for all your drawings on a project. This will help you replicate that folder structure for all your drawings.
This is a demonstration of the Create Object Folders Dynamo script. So what this script does is it creates the object folders for the various object types in Toolspace Prospector. So the ones that support creating a folder are surfaces. Each of the alignment types support folders, pipe network support folders, corridors, intersections, and view frame groups. So this tool points at a CSV file that you choose, and you can set this up and you can preset it up for your project or whatever. So the way it works is the first column, it looks to see which object type we're creating a folder under. So we have surface, centerline, offset is for offset alignment, centerline is for centerline alignment, curb return for curb return alignment, rail for rail alignment, miscellaneous for miscellaneous alignment, network for pipe network, corridor for corridors, intersection for intersections, and we have view frame group for view frame groups. And then the second column is the actual folder. As you can see, most of these I only have a single folder shown here, so that will just create a single folder under the root with that name. But this does support adding additional subfolders. So in the example down here for view frame groups, I first create the first folder, and then after that I create the first or the second folder underneath the first folder. So it's important you create these in the correct order So I couldn't have the second folder ahead of the first folder. So something to keep in mind when you're building your CSV file. All right, so with that in place, we'll go ahead and run the script. This is a brand new DWG file. We don't have any folders in place yet. I'm just going to search folders, and that gets me to the script. There are no inputs through Dynamo Player, so I'm just going to run this. Then I'll refer to the command line. You can see on the bottom, it says select the object folder data file. I can either browse to the file, or I can pick the folder or pick the last known location, which in this case is the default under our Dynamo script resources. If I were to browse to a different location, the Dynamo script would then remember that location for the next time you run this. So you don't have to keep browsing over and over again if you got a specific project folder. I'll just pick the default one here. You can see it completed, and now we have all of our folders. If I go down to the view frame groups, there you can see I've got even the subfolder created.
The next Dynamo script is called sync project files, and this has been a long what I want to say wish list item from people that trying to find a way where if you make a change in your project to reflect that change through all your DWG files that are dependent on that change. So we're hoping that this script will help make that process just a little bit easier.
This is a demonstration video of the sync project files Dynamo script. So the idea behind this script is for you to easily propagate changes throughout your project. Say, for example, you make a modification to an alignment in a file, and you need that change to be reflected in everything downstream in your project data structure, whether it be corridors, and then the corridors affect surfaces, all your plan sheet files. So getting those changes moved through your project, trying to automate that process. Normally you would have to go ahead and open each one of those files and synchronize, rebuild any surfaces, rebuild any corridors that might be affected. So the way this works is you would develop a CSV file, and in that CSV file you would list each of the files that you want to open up and update. Now the key here is that you need to place these files in the list in the order that the data flows through your project. So, this is a good activity in a way because it helps you understand how the data flows through your project. And it can also help you, identify any issues with the data flow through your project. Say, for instance, I have this ALI prof file listed here, but then I see that ALI prof file listed further down in the list. That should be a red flag to me, because it's showing that I'm looping back and I potentially have a circular reference. So just the activity of listing your project files in the CSV is a good exercise for identifying issues. But again, you would list your files in order that you want to open and update. And then if you have any corridors or any surfaces in those files that you want to update, you would indicate that in the columns over here. If it's a corridor, you would indicate that it's a corridor. If it's a surface, you would indicate that it's a surface. So then the script would then open up that file, rebuild the corridor. If that file is listed again because there's a second corridor in that, it would keep the file open and rebuild the next corridor. Same goes for surfaces. So not only do the files need to be in the order that you want things updated, but you also need to list the objects within those files in the order that you want them updated, because one corridor might be dependent on another corridor, and one surface might be dependent on another surface. In the first column here, we just put an X in front of each line to indicate that we want to process that line. So you have the CSV file for your whole project, and maybe I only need to update everything from the corridor down, this corridor file down. I removed the X from the ALI prof file because I know that's already up to date. Maybe that's where I made the change. So that's how the CSV works. The idea here is as you build out your project, you continue to add files to this CSV file, add lines to it, add objects to it, and ultimately you have a full list of how the data flows through your project. So that's how the CSV file works. Let's go ahead and try the tool out. So I'm going to run this from Dynamo Player. There it is, Action Sync Project Files. So there's no inputs that you need to take care of in Dynamo Player. You just need to go ahead and run it. So I'll do that. And right away it asks you, it says, are all files to be updated closed? So you can't update, I can't open a file and update it if it's already open, whether it's on your device or somebody else's device. So if the file's open and you need it closed in order to proceed, you can go ahead and hit no here and take care of that. If everything's good to go, you can hit yes. Now, if for some reason the file happens to be open on someone else's machine and you didn't know it, that's okay. You'll have an opportunity as this progresses through the list and processes everything. It'll let you know that, hey, that file's open when it gets to it. And then at that point, you can either tap that person on the shoulder, say, hey, can you please close the file? And then you can tell the script to proceed through that file, or you could ignore it. In this case, all my files are closed. I'm going to hit yes. It then prompts you for the CSV file. That's the file I just showed you at the beginning. And then it asks you if you want to sync your files when you open them with the WisDOT reference templates. Now, by default, we have our WisDOT reference templates enabled. Every time you open up a drawing that's connected to those reference templates, you see it synchronized. And that process can take about 30 seconds. So that can, if add 30 seconds to opening and closing every drawing, that can take some time to synchronize those. So here you have an opportunity to temporarily disable the reference templates, and you'll find it processes significantly quicker because it doesn't have to synchronize with all those styles. So I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'm going to choose no. So you can see that the files are now opening. It synchronizes the references right away. Here I purposely placed a object in here that has an incorrect file name, so it's going to prompt you if it runs across any of that. Here in this case, I do want to update the file name so it matches the source spot. Excuse me, I do want to update the object name so it matches the source object name. So I'm going to update that. We're finished with the first drawing. Now it's moving on to the corridor drawing. You can see that it's synchronizing the references. It's rebuilding the corridor. Here's something I placed in here on purpose. In the CSV file, you can see that I added this additional corridor. I just called it, gave it a name something else, just to demonstrate what happens if the script encounters an object that does not exist in the file that's specified. It just tells you it does not exist. So at this point, you can either abort everything and just quit the process, take care of the issue if there is one, or I can just ignore it. In this case, I'm going to ignore it. That was a mistake. I didn't really mean to have that in the CSV file. It's not really applicable. It's processing all the refinement surface files, and now it's onto the section view file. Once everything is complete, it'll notify you. It'll say process complete, and then it tells you where it placed the log file. So the log file is placed in the same directory as wherever your CSV file is. So here's my CSV file. It names it the same thing and places it right next to your CSV and just gives it a .log extension. So let's go ahead and take a look at that log file. So you can just open that up in your text editor, and here it just gives you a nice detailed look at everything that the script did. You can see the ALI profile, it just opened it and saved it. That process, there were no corridors or surfaces in there, so just opening and saving it, updated any data references, X references, things like that. Then it opened the corridor file. It found that it needed to rebuild this corridor, so it did. Because that corridor was rebuilt, it also needed to rebuild the associated corridor surfaces. If you remember, that something else corridor did not exist in the DWG, therefore we skipped it. And then it moved on to, it saved the corridor file, then it opened up our refinement top file, rebuilt that surface, saved it. Then it moved on to our refinement datum surface and rebuilt it. And then finally, it opened up our section view file, and nothing to rebuild in there, just a matter of syncing the references, and then it was done.
All right, and then the final demonstration that I have here today is a new subassembly that we released in our last update called Median Daylight. So this sort of combines the median functionality of our median ditch or berm subassembly with the functionality of our primary daylight subassembly, daylight profile control, and allows you to split the median in two. This is an introduction to the WisDOT median daylight subassembly. The median daylight subassembly is very similar to the median ditch or berm subassembly, although it has several additional key functions. The median daylight subassembly now allows you to break the median into two sides. You could choose to have a ditch, a fill slope, or no slope at all for each independent side. Controlling this behavior can be done with the subassembly parameters or through control profiles. In addition to that, you have similar functionality as seen with the WisDOT daylight profile control subassembly, where you can choose which intercept to the target surface the subassembly should use. Let's take a look at a use case. A common scenario where this subassembly would be used is for scratch grading in a divided highway median, perhaps for a cable guard preparation project. For this example, the first step I did was to stylize my existing ground surface to identify where slopes were deficient. In this case, I use surface analysis and a slopes analysis type. I colored all slopes that were steeper than a 6:1 red. That gives me an indication of the areas that I need to address for my project. Next thing I did was create a setup surface for my southbound shoulder. I have a simple setup assembly that has nothing more than a link, width, and slope. You can see that assembly applied here along the southbound alignment. If I go into section editor, you can see the assembly applied. The red line here indicates my edge of shoulder. I'm just going a little bit farther than that to make sure I have good coverage. Once I've created that setup corridor, I've created a setup surface. That setup surface is used to create a surface profile using the southbound shoulder alignment. This will become my target for my main corridor. I'm no longer using this setup corridor, or I no longer need to see it, so I'm going to change its style to no display. Now I can create my main corridor. Let's take a look at the main corridor assembly. I've started out with a simple link, width, and slope subassembly. This just represents the top of my finished northbound shoulder. Then I've got a subassembly I've named Jump to Southbound. This is simply a link offset, and elevation subassembly. That's going to target my southbound reference line and profile. From there, I can build my southbound shoulder, as shown by my cursor. At the edge of my southbound shoulder, I'm creating a mark point. I'm calling it SB_ES, which stands for southbound edge of shoulder. And then finally, I've inserted the new median daylight subassembly. Let's take a look at the parameters. I've just put an arbitrary width in for the median layout width. We'll be targeting the width in the corridor. I'm using a target type of mark point. The mark point is what I created earlier at the edge of shoulder, and I called it SB_ES. The next two parameters is how we want to treat the slopes for the independent sides. If I were to set both of these to ditch, you'd get a full median throughout the corridor. In this case, I don't want to create a full median throughout the corridor. I want to create independent fill slopes on each side to correct any deficient areas. Then we have our slopes for each side, in this case 6:1. And we want to make sure we keep 6:1 for both sides instead of using one as a controlling slope. The ditch berm for slope width is used if you were to put a ditch on one side of the median, but not the other. In this case, that doesn't apply. The ditch bottom berm top width is set to 0. This is just the width of a flat bottom ditch or a flat top berm. Again, this does not apply in our situation. Ditch back slope, again, only applies if we're putting in a ditch on one side or the other. Attachment side number of surface intercepts. This just tells the subassembly what minimum number of intercepts it should go to before it uses that intercept with the surface. This is useful in scratch grading because you may intercept a surface multiple times. In our case, we want to use the last possible intercept. So I just put in a large number like 100. And I've done that for both sides. Attachment side minimum width to intercept. Again, we have that parameter for both sides. In our case, we've just set that to 0. The resolve slope overlap will come in handy later, and we'll cover that in a few minutes. Let's create our corridor. So we're going to use our northbound alignment and northbound proposed profile, and we'll use our northbound assembly. Our target surface is going to be our cable guard existing ground. We can go ahead and set the baseline and region parameters right away. We'll set our station range. In this case, I want to go to 2763 all the way to 2829. Let's double check our frequencies. We're just going to disable a few of these because we're using surface profiles. And now we can set our targets. The first target, if you remember, is to jump to southbound. That's just targeting the southbound alignment so we can create that shoulder. Then we need to target our southbound shoulder width. And then again, we need, in the elevation category, we need to target the southbound proposed profile and the southbound proposed shoulder profile, which we, if you remember, we created with the setup surface and surface profile. I'll click OK. Click OK. Once the corridor rebuilds, we're going to notice several messages in our event viewer. Let's take a look at those. All of the messages say the same thing. Report error, attachment side and connecting sides overlap. Let's take a look at the section editor and go over what this error is actually telling us. So in many areas like this, you can see that the slopes, the independent slopes are formed nicely. However, if we proceed further down the alignment, you can see they begin to overlap. That's exactly what the error is telling us. So there's several ways we can address this. One way is to create independent control profiles that tell the subassembly to form a full ditch here instead of independent fill slopes. That could be very time consuming because, as you can see, some areas overlap, some areas don't, and you'd have to identify all those areas and address them independently with the control profiles. So that's why, if we go back to the subassembly properties, we've included an option to resolve these overlaps automatically. I'm going to set this resolve slope overlap to yes. Let's take a look at what happens. As you can see, the corridor changed. Let's take a look at what happens in those areas where there was overlap. Now the subassembly automatically forms a full median ditch in those situations. It's important to go back and review these areas. These areas are places where you need to make sure that you still have good drainage. But as you can see, as you scroll through the corridor, all those red areas in general are covered up, and therefore all the deficient slopes have been resolved. Okay, that's all I have for my live demonstration. Mitch Lavin is up next to go over some beam guard topics.
So in the latest update in February, we updated a couple of things in the beam guard. And the first item on the agenda is we added back into the beam guard subassemblies the beam guard marker objects. So if we look here in the subassemblies, we can see that there's a little conditional subassemblies going out, and the markers are there. You just can't see them in the layout of the subassembly. But when we go into the corridor section editor, you can see them in the section editor. And then once you actually data reference or external reference the corridor into your cross-section drawing, the access sheets code set styles will also display that corridor marker style. So the summary is the marker styles are back in the beam guard subassemblies or the beam guard assemblies, and they can be seen in the section editor and also in the cross-section sheets. The second item on the updates were in the BeamGuard palettes, which are available on the WisDOT design panel or WisDOT design tab. BeamGuard palette block, BeamGuard blocks palette, sorry. And some of the layout blocks have been updated, actually the majority of them. And if we just double check the standard detail drawing, we can see that the kink for the EAT blocks are actually not at post 9. The kink is just 3.125 feet downstream of post 9. So we updated the blocks in the layout. Let me get back to Civil 3D here. So that the kink in the blocks is 3.25 or 3.125 feet away from post 9. And then we also added in some layout geometry. For instance, on the ones that are curved, there's a line in the design visibility state that represents the center of the arc or the curve for that the block is anchored on. So it just helps a little bit of more layout and making sure that everything lines up correctly. And then finally, the last items on the BeamGuard blocks updates have to do with more detailed design of the actual BeamGuard objects. So if we jump back into the BeamGuard palette, we can see that there's another tab called BeamGuard Detail. And in that detail palette, we created a bunch of blocks that represent the standard BeamGuard objects. EATs, thriving transitions, the guardrail, the individual 12.5 foot sections, and then the individual parts and pieces that build the bigger assemblies. I'm going to cover them real quick. There's 3 blocks for the thriving transition and 3 blocks for the EATs. One for the tangent in each of them, and then 2 for curves. The curved in, so there's a naming convention is curve in, curve out. For the curve in blocks, it wants it to, or the intent is that the block will curve in towards the alignment. So they're suitable for the outside of edge of a curve. The curve out blocks will curve away from the alignment, or curving out from the alignment for the inside of a curve. Now these blocks can be placed and manipulated for your design. Just wanted to show a quick tip on how to utilize, let's say you have a long stretch along a curve, maybe going to a tangent, just kind of what we thought of for a long stretch of MGS guardrail on that alignment or that curve there. So what I want to do is actually place an array of the BeamGuard post along the shoulder gravel here. And to do that, I'm first going to draw, because the actual post starts 3.125 feet from the edge of the EAT block. So I'm going to draw a curve or an arc using the start center length portion of the arc, just to kind of get in the right location. So I'm going to start it there, and I'm going to attach it to the center of that curve, and then I'm going to specify a length of 3.125 feet. Okay, so that's the horizontal location along that line that I want that block for the post to start. And then I'm going to draw a line perpendicular to that arc so I can make sure I get my rotation of that block correct. So I'm going to select that arc, grab that endpoint, and go out at 5 feet or so, something like that. So I know that line's perpendicular to that arc at that location. Now I can place my block, my MGS wood post with block out block here, and I'll drop that in here in the location that I need it to be, and we'll rotate it quick to get it oriented. So I'm going to grab the rotate command and then specify my base point, this location there, and then I'm going to specify a reference angle, and this is where getting that tangent line or perpendicular line there. So I'm going to specify my second point here and then rotate it. Now the block is oriented with the roadway at that particular location. I can delete that line there, and now I can draw a polyline. I can get a bigger screen here. I can draw a polyline that represents the path that I want those blocks to be placed at. So I can start at that location. I'm going to draw an arc because I know I need that to be an arc. I'm going to grab my second point, snap, and just snap somewhere in the middle. Then we'll zoom down to the endpoint of the PT. And then we'll transition to a line and maybe go a little bit further. Now that's the path that I want to array that block along. And basically it represents what the face of the rail is. So to array this block, just select the object, and then we can select right click or hit enter. Now we select the path curve, select the polyline, and it arrays down the line. And we can adjust the spacing to what we need it to be, so 6.25 feet. And then the block has been placed. Now that array it just helps us place blocks if we need to explode it. Say we have a long span or something. If we need to adjust locations, we can explode it, and it's just individual blocks again. Then we can offset the face of the rail face here, a distance, I don't know what that is, to kind of get a better picture of what the rail looks like. And now we have our beam guard section. So for instance, if we needed that long span, we can delete it there. So that's all I had for beam guard blocks.